Alright, so it's another day working on the van. It's kind of wet and cold out today, so instead of working out on the van, we're going to go in the shop and get the oil pan welded up, get the intake welded up, and get the transmission all ready to go in the van. Here we've got most of the work done, painting and insulating, so all we've got to do is finish up these panels here and get those ready to go in. I'm just going to scuff them up, paint them again, and put them back. So we are getting close in here. We're trying to build this new oil pan to try and replicate the original 50-degree oil pan. I've got this little level gauge, and that's sitting at 50 degrees. And we're just gonna weld up an oil pan and then fix that pickup tube so it's closer to the bottom. What we're doing is trying to copy this oil pan. And I know they sell an adapter to fit this on here, but the whole kit is like $400 and it comes from Europe. It's a great kit, and I might do that in the future, but for now I'm gonna see if I can't make an oil pan for about $50 and just get this motor in there and get it running. All right, and here's the mocked up oil pan. And I'm keeping it just barely tilted that way so it'll drain better. And also that's where the pickup is, so all the oil will go down more. Pretty simple little design. Now I've just got to weld these up and get it finished. Got it all welded up. Now the next step is going to be cutting that and getting it to sit about 3/8 of an inch off the bottom of my oil pan, and then getting that finished up and sealed, welded up or whatever I'm going to figure out, and then I can come back and weld inside all these joints and make the end caps and get the end caps welded in, and that is my oil pan. And there's my adjusted oil pan pickup. It's not beautiful, but it'll hold and it definitely won't break. Here it is with the oil pan on. It's about 3/8 of an inch below, and I think that should make a pretty good pickup tube. I got the bottom plate welded on and the side plate finish welded. Looks pretty good. So right now I am just gonna start doing the end caps. I also finished the oil pickup tube. I ended up going over the welds and just putting some silicone bronze on there to make sure it's sealed up nice and tight. And now I've got these two ends to weld up, which won't be too bad. It, as you can see, it sits pretty flush everywhere, so welding it would be. All right, and this is the plate for the back side. It's on there pretty good. And here's the new oil pan. All welded up, cleaned up. I think it'll have plenty of room for oil. We're at 50 degrees, and then come down here, and we're a little bit tilted in. That's where the pickup tube is, right in the middle. It's not a beautiful oil pan, but it'll definitely work well for what I'm doing. The last step is to relocate this drain for the turbo. It's got to come down to the oil pan somewhere, so it's got a nice easy drain with no high spots. So you also want it draining above the oil level when the engine's running. So you got to figure out if I want to come straight down and in, or if I want to come across and in. I think this way would give me more height above the oil and maybe a more direct line. I'm going to rotate the turbo so it's facing up. I'm going to cap this off. I also have to modify this intake. I'm going to cut it, rotate it around, and try and get it a little lower. And then also put this manifold air pressure gauge in there somewhere. But that'll be the last thing I have to do. I'll order a braided steel line for the turbo, reroute that. I gotta finish all my coolant fittings, and then the bus is ready to go in the van for a test fire. Back underneath the van, looking at the firewall. Today we're going to be putting some foam insulation in against the rear bench seat area underneath the bench seat, and then we'll put the ceramic insulation on top of that. And we've also got some panels that I built that sit on there and hold everything in and keep it all watertight. So I'm gonna start gluing all this stuff down. And here's all the insulation put in. Here's all the ceramic insulation installed. I'm very impressed because I used the same glue as the denim insulation, and it holds it up there really well. Just hit it on the metal and then hit it on the back of the insulation, and it just sticks right up there. Here are some aluminum panels that I built. They're just holding the insulation up there, and hopefully they'll also reflect some of that heat back towards the engine and transmission. Took the old input shaft out, and this was the coupler. It was originally square on both sides, but there's no relief in this differential, so it made it very difficult to get this out. What I did is just put a chamfer on with the lathe, so I have a little bit more clearance. Most of the force is going to be spread across the entire thing, so I'm not worried about strength, but it'll help me a lot to put this thing back in and to take it out in the future if I have to. Just finished painting the transmission. I used a texture gun, and the texture came through in some spots better than others. As you can see, that's pretty smooth. That's textured, but overall it looks all right. I got it all repainted and cleaned up. I got the new input shaft in, the new throwout bearing, and the new bell housing from the diesel Vanagon in. So all we need now is a new reverse switch, because that got melted up, and I need the starter adapter so I can run a TDI motor starter. I might just make my own. Not really sure. I know the adapter is like 90 bucks, but I just don't know if I want to spend on something I can build in the shop. My paint job was very thick. I think the thicker the better when it comes to painting transmissions that are going to get beat up under the car. But I think it looks pretty good, and it's ready to go back in. So I'm just going to go over the wiring harness really briefly and just show you about what I kept. The reason why I'm only going over it briefly is because I actually had a friend of mine build this for me. I've just had no time to get into it and figure it all out. So for the price that he built it for me, it was kind of a no-brainer to just have him do it, and I could move along with other stuff. So starting from the ECU, this is going to be underneath the back bench along with the main ignition relay. That's going to be sitting underneath the bench, and then it'll go through the firewall and into the engine. All this is going towards the engine, and this is going up towards the front. This is my OBD2 reader, and this is also going to go to the front. This is the throttle pedal. Just plugs in there. It's got the map sensor plug, N75 plug, and then going towards the front of the engine plugs, There's only a few here. That's the alternator, coolant temperature, crank sensor, and this is the big injection pump plug on the front of the motor. And then this is the sensor for the third injector. So it's really not much. If you're good with wiring diagrams really at all, I'm sure you could do it. But you know, for 300 bucks, you could have somebody who builds them regularly go through and build it. It cost me a little bit extra because I needed about 10 feet of cable to get all the way to the front. I wanted the OBD2 underneath the dash like it would be in a new car. So it cost me a little bit more, but I think that that's the best way to do it. So if it ever has a problem on a road trip, I don't have to dig out the OBD2 sensor from underneath the rear bench. It's just going to be by the glove box where it should be. I also had them tune the ECU. It's just a basic stage 3 tune with a bunch of swap related stuff deleted and the immobilizer removed. That is something that needs to be done on every swap. And now this whole setup is ready to go in the van and get it running. So hopefully next episode I'll have the wiring harness in place, and then we will work on putting the motor in. The sun's going down today. That's about all we're going to get done on the van. Got a lot of work done so far, and the next episode we're going to get all of the interior pieces put back in, and once we're done with that, we can start going through and figuring out wiring, where we want to put the wiring harness and where we want to put the ECU underneath that bench seat. A few things to figure out, but thanks for watching this episode. Next episode we're going to get a lot more done. Maybe mount the TDI in there. Not sure if the motor is ready to go in yet.